Creative writing, modes of writing. This is a presentation on narrative writing. Modes of writing are different categories for writing. Each mode has a specific purpose. There are 4 basic modes: descriptive, narrative, expository, and persuasive. The purpose of this video is to help you better understand the slide on narrative writing. The main purpose of narrative writing is to tell a story of an event, real or imaginary. You will know them also as non-fictional or fictional narrative. This type of writing allows you to tell a story of an event in an organized manner. Narrative writings should be written in a way to keep the reader's interest throughout the story. Therefore, all narratives have the same basic elements of character, plot, point of view, theme and setting. Here is an extract of a fictional story. I will use this story to help you understand more about narrative writing. Here goes.
The Lory Who Longed for Honey, by Leela Berg. Once upon a time, in the hot sunny country, lived a very bright and beautiful parrot. He was red and green and gold and blue, with a dark purple top to his head. His real name was Lory, and he lived on honey. There were hundreds of flowers growing among the trees, so all he had to do when he was hungry was to fly down and lick the honey out of the flowers. As a matter of fact, he had a tongue that was specially shaped for getting honey out of flowers. So he always had plenty to eat and managed very well. All day long, he flew about in the sun while the monkeys chatted and the bright birds screamed. And as long as he had plenty of honey, he was perfectly happy. Then one day a sailor came to the forest looking for parrots. He found the parrot that liked honey and took him away. He didn't know that this parrot's real name was Lory. He didn't know that he had a tongue specially shaped for getting honey out of flowers. He didn't even know he liked honey. He only knew he was a very bright and beautiful parrot, and he meant to take him to England and sell him. So on board the ship, he fed the parrot on sunflower seeds and taught him to say, "What have you got? What have you got? What have you got for me?" And whenever the Lory said this, the sailor gave him a sunflower seed. Although, as a matter of fact, he would very much rather have had honey. When he reached England, the sailor sold the parrot who liked honey to an old lady who lived in a cottage on the hill. She didn't know much about parrots. She didn't know the parrot was a Lory. She didn't know he had a special tongue for licking honey out of flowers. She didn't even know he liked honey. But she thought his red and green feathers, his gold and blue feathers, and the dark purple feathers on the top of his head were beautiful. She called him Polly and fed him on bits of bread and biscuit. Whenever he said, as he often did, "What have you got? What have you got? What have you got for me?" she would give him a bit of bread or biscuit. But of course, he would very much rather have had honey. Now the old lady lived by herself and had to work very hard to make enough money to buy food. Generally she had just bread and margarine for supper, because she couldn't afford to buy honey even for herself, although she liked it. Then one day when she wasn't in the least expecting it, the old lady's nephew who lived in South Africa sent her a present. It was a wooden box carefully packed with straw. Some of the straws was already poking between the boards, but it was impossible to tell what was inside. When the mailman brought it, he said, "Looks like a nice surprise, lady. Maybe some jelly or some fruit." She carried the box carefully into her living room and unfastened it. It wasn't jelly or fruit. It was 6 jars of honey all wrapped up in straw.
You would notice from this narrative that the author immediately sets the scene and revealed the main character. The writer also conveyed a mood, communicated a theme, and chose a point of view. How do you think the scene was set? You will notice that the writer begins his story in the forest. It shows the Lory movement from the forest to England. Your own story must begin somewhere. Sometimes you may even have to include the time, weather, or culture. Details such as this can help you create the mood or expectation about a character and action. Next, consider how the character is revealed. The writer makes the Laurie lifelike, almost with qualities and desires the reader can relate to, even while he describes him as a bird. The slide showed 3 ways to make the character lifelike. You can use interesting dialogue, language, and vivid description. In the story, the writer used a combination of these. For example, the dialogue revealed the Laurie's personalities, and the vivid description allowed us to understand the character of the Laurie better. The writer used these same devices to reveal the other characters in the story. Some writers use language to reflect the character's background, especially when the reader needs to know this in order to understand the character, or even when the writer wants you to place some form of judgment on a character. Describing a character could be quite a task. You should remember the points from the slide on describing a character. This story tells us how the character looks, moves, and speaks, how the character behaves towards others, how others react to the character, the personality traits of the character, and consider the overall impression you wish to convey. Next, the theme should be obvious. In this story it is this line, "And as long as he had plenty of honey, he was perfectly happy." This sentence hints the direction of the story, but still does not spoil the story. The reader still wants to read further. Thus it provokes the question, what would happen if the Laurie does not get honey? Did you notice the point of view this story is told? It is definitely written in the third person, omniscient narrator, who seems to be everywhere, knows everything, and sometimes relays the thoughts of some of the characters in the story. This point of view is effective in telling us about the Laurie, where the Laurie came from, and how the old lady ended up with the Laurie. It is used to reveal the plot of the story. You should also notice that the writing is well organized and logical. Refer to the slide to view a construction of the stages of the plot for this story. This example should help you write your own narrative. Finally, this story has a conflict as well. It is between the 2 main characters. You should always make sure your narrative has a conflict. Now, get moving and begin your practice on writing your own narrative essay. The link below will carry you to a list of narrative topics.